It's funny, isn't it? We live in a world that constantly tells us to do more, be more, know more.
Yeah, definitely.
You open your phone and it's just a tidal wave of information, choices. It can feel like you're trying to catch 100 ping pong balls at once,
Yeah,
you know?
totally. And our source for this deep dive, Gary Keller's The One Thing, well, it jumps right into that feeling, that sense of overwhelm.
Right.
Absolutely. It's the paradox of our time, isn't it? Like unprecedented access to everything, but still this nagging feeling of being spread too thin, not really doing what matters most.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is the core issue we're tackling today. And that's precisely why we're taking this deep dive into The One Thing, which you, our listener, actually suggested. So our mission here is to pull out the key insights from these opening chapters, the stuff that can really shift how you approach your goals.
Think of it as your shortcut, maybe, to the essential understanding of Keller's core principles.
Right. And we're going to go through each chapter, methodically, one by one, so you can grasp each idea clearly without feeling, buried.
Yeah, and for you, the learner who's looking for that quick yet solid understanding, those real aha moments maybe, but without being overloaded.
Exactly.
That's what we've designed this for. We want this to be a focused, valuable use of your time.
Okay, so let's get started. Chapter 1, The One Thing.
Okay.
The book kicks off with that classic scene from City Slickers, right? Curly, the old cowboy.
Yeah. Giving Mitch that advice. One thing. Just one thing.
Simple advice, but profound, ultimately.
Well, what strikes me isn't just the simplicity, It's Mitch's total lack of understanding at first.
Right. He didn't get it.
And it's interesting that the author himself admits he didn't really grasp the power of that until he hit like a wall in his own business. He'd built something successful, sure, but suddenly it felt like he was losing control. Everything demanding his attention equally.
Exactly. He reached that point where, despite all his effort, things just weren't improving. And that's when he sought guidance. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. You might expect a consultant to come in with, like, a huge list of fixes.
Yeah, the usual playbook.
But instead, the coach focused on just one thing. Finding and hiring 14 key people for very specific roles.
It's almost counterintuitive, isn't it? When things feel like they're falling apart, our instinct is often to try and do more, to attack every problem at once.
Right.
But the coach's laser focus on just those 14 hires, it suggests a totally different approach. That sometimes the biggest impact comes from one very targeted action. What was your initial reaction to hearing that? That the solution was so narrow?
Honestly, I was surprised. It feels like if a company's struggling, you need this broad strategy, not just a few hires, right? But the coach's response is so direct. No, Jesus needed 12, but you'll need 14. That really underlines the idea, doesn't it? That a small, carefully chosen number can have a massive impact.
And the author took this to an extreme. He actually fired himself as CEO.
Which is wild.
So he could dedicate all his energy to finding those 14 people.
And the results.
Remarkable. Within 3 years, the company hit this sustained year-over-year growth, averaging 40% for almost a decade.
Wow.
They went from being, a regional player to this international force. It's just a powerful demonstration of concentrating effort on what truly matters.
It really is.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder how often we dilute our own efforts trying to tackle too much.
For sure. And it was through this whole experience that the concept of the one thing really started to solidify for him.
Right. Initially, when he was coaching his own top people, they'd agree on several tasks. But even when most got done, they weren't seeing those breakthrough results they hoped for.
Which raises a crucial point about how we even define productivity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Is it just about checking off the most boxes? Or is it about achieving the most significant outcomes?
Good question.
And the author's realization was that by narrowing the focus, by agreeing on fewer actions, but making sure those were the right actions, the impact was far greater.
Right. It evolved from a few key priorities down to just 2, and then finally to that pivotal question he started asking them.
The big one.
What's the one thing you can do this week, such that by doing it, everything else would be easier or unnecessary?
And he emphasizes when they truly focused on answering that single question, the results just went through the roof.
Yeah.
The beauty of that question is its simplicity, but it forces you to be incredibly discerning, doesn't it?
Totally.
It pushes you to find that leverage point, the one action that will have this cascading positive effect.
And for you, the learner, you can see how this applies to gaining knowledge efficiently, right? Like finding the foundational concept in a new field could make everything else so much easier to understand later.
Exactly. So Chapter 1 really sets the stage. It shows us the power of focusing on that single most important thing.
Okay, let's move on then. Chapter 2, Going Small. This chapter digs into why some people seem to achieve so much more than others, even though, we all get the same 24 hours in a day.
And Keller argues the answer lies in going small, focusing on the essence.
Yeah, getting to the heart of it.
What's fascinating here is the analogy they use to illustrate this. The domino analogy.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
We all kind of get how one domino knocks over another, right? Simple. But the book discusses this demonstration by Lauren Whitehead, highlighting the truly geometric progression of the effect. It's not just linear.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it? They point out that the 10th domino is almost as tall as Peyton Manning.
Yeah. And the 18th rivals the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
Crazy.
And by the 57th domino, it would literally reach from the Earth to the moon.
Wow. Okay, that's a real aha moment, isn't it?
It really is.
It's not just about doing one thing. It's about finding the right first domino. The one that can set off this massive chain reaction, leading to extraordinary results.
What stands out to you about just the scale of that potential?
Well, it really emphasizes the exponential power of a focused effort, doesn't it? It's not just steady, linear progress. It's the idea that by focusing on the right starting point, you can create a much, much larger impact down the line.
Precisely. It underscores that principle that, significant achievements usually aren't the result of a lot of scattered effort,
Right.
but rather a focused sequential effort where each step builds powerfully on the last one.
Okay, so now let's transition. Chapter 3, One Product, One Service. This chapter takes that going small idea and applies it squarely to the business world, giving us some really recognizable examples.
Yeah, and what's interesting is the variety. You've got Colonel Sanders with his singular secret chicken recipe launching KFC.
A class.
The Adolf Coors company initially focusing on just one product from one brewery and seeing massive growth. Intel's dominance, largely driven by their microprocessors.
And Starbucks, of course.
And Starbucks, yeah. Can't forget them.
Right. And the book makes a good point that sometimes that one thing isn't the direct product or service you sell.
Right, can be indirect.
But maybe the core driver of revenue. Look at Google. Their one thing, you could argue, is search, right?
Absolutely. Which then fuels their primary income stream through advertising.
Exactly.
And then there's Apple, which is a really insightful example of how a company's one thing can actually evolve over time.
Yeah, that's a good point. They started with Macs,
Yeah.
then shifted focus to iMacs,
Yeah.
then iTunes, then iPods,
Oh.
then iPhones.
And the iPad, too, obviously, became huge.
Right. But what's key with Apple, the book argues, is that as each new flagship product emerged, it created what they call a halo effect on their other products.
Glad.
The success and, frankly, the coolness of the iPhone, for example, made people more inclined to buy other Apple stuff. Macs, iPads, whatever.
It shows that focus doesn't necessarily mean staying static, right?
No.
It can be a strategic progression around a central, powerful offering. That adaptability while keeping a core focus is a critical takeaway, I think.
Definitely. It's not about being rigidly tied to one thing forever, but having that central engine that drives growth and allows for, logical expansion.
Makes sense.
Okay, let's move on to chapter 4. One person. This chapter shifts our focus a bit from what companies offer to the individuals who drive extraordinary success.
Highlighting that, achievement rarely happens in isolation.
Yeah, this chapter really emphasizes the importance of mentors, advisors, key influencers, the people around you. They give examples like Sam Walton being significantly supported in his early business ventures by his father-in-law, L.S. Robson.
I hadn't known that detail. And I found the example of Albert Einstein and his early mentor, Max Talmud, particularly impactful.
Oh, yeah.
Talmud introduced young Einstein to crucial scientific and philosophical texts over several really formative years. It really shaped his intellectual development,
Wow. And Oprah Winfrey also talks extensively about the influence of her father and also Jeffrey D. Jacobs.
Right, Jacobs played a key role in her decision to start her own production company, Harpo Productions. These examples just underscore the idea, don't they? That having the right people in your corner can be absolutely transformative.
Yeah, the chapter really drives home the point that even with intense individual focus, having the support and guidance of others is often a crucial ingredient for extraordinary success. And they include that powerful quote from General George S. Patton, "You must be single-minded. Drive for the one thing on which you have decided."
which reinforces the main theme of focus.
Exactly.
But within the context of also relying on others for support and wisdom, you don't have to do it all alone.
No, definitely not.
Oh.
So now we're at chapter 5, One Passion, One Skill.
Okay.
This chapter explores the powerful interplay between what truly excites us, our passion, and the abilities we develop, or skills, suggesting that exceptional achievement often stems from this connection.
Right. They highlight how Pat Matthews turned his passion for painting into a tangible skill and eventually a profession through just consistent daily practice. And Angelo Marico, who built a thriving tour guide business rooted in his genuine passion for Italy and wanting to share its beauty and history.
The chapter makes the point, doesn't it, that passion often fuels the dedication needed to develop a skill.
Yeah, exactly.
The more we enjoy something, the more likely we are to put in the time and effort to get good at it.
And then as our skills improve, we see better results, which then reinforces our passion. It's like a positive feedback loop.
Totally. And then there's the incredibly moving story of Gilbert Tuhal-Bonnier.
Ah, yes. Gilbert's passion for running is a truly compelling example. It didn't just propel him to athletic success, winning national championships in Burundi,
Which is amazing in itself.
but it also played a vital role in his survival during a horrific attack on his high school.
Yes. His story of escaping that violence by running. It's just incredible. But his passion didn't stop there, did it?
No, not at all. It fueled his move to the United States, his continued running career, and ultimately led him to co-found the Gazelle Foundation.
And their Run for the Water charity.
Right, bringing clean water to people back in Burundi. It's just a powerful illustration of how a deep passion can shape a whole life and have this profound positive impact on the world.
Absolutely. And the chapter includes that strong quote from Vince Lombardi. Success demands singleness of purpose.
Which echoes that recurring theme, right? Focused energy leading to exceptional outcomes. This time linking it specifically to our passions and the skills we build.
Right. Okay, let's move on to chapter 6, One Life. This chapter kind of broadens the perspective, looking at how the principle of the one thing can be applied across an entire extraordinary life. And they use Bill Gates as a prominent example.
Yeah, Bill Gates' journey is a pretty compelling illustration of a singular focus evolving over time, isn't it?
Definitely.
His early, really intense passion for computers led him to relentlessly develop his programming skills.
Obsessively, almost.
Right, and that passion and skill then connected him with Paul Allen, a key individual, going back to the last chapter,
Good connection.
who became his crucial partner in co-founding Microsoft.
And that pivotal moment with Ed Roberts, responding to that one letter, seizing the opportunity to write the basic interpreter for the Altair 8800.
All stem from that initial deep interest.
Exactly. Microsoft's early focus was primarily on developing and selling that one piece of software for that specific computer, which, well, as we all know, had a monumental impact.
Huge. And even later in his career, after stepping away from the day-to-day at Microsoft, Bill Gates' focus shifted to the Gates Foundation.
Right.
And there, a singular guiding question, something like, where can we have the greatest impact with our resources? That question has driven their massive philanthropic efforts.
So this chapter really highlights how a central driving force, that one thing, can manifest in different ways throughout a person's life.
Yeah, whether it's a burning passion, a honed skill, or just a fundamental question that guides their actions.
Ultimately leading to significant lasting achievements.
Right.
Which brings us nicely to chapter 7. One thing. This chapter sort of serves as a powerful reminder of the core concept, especially when faced with the often overwhelming complexities of modern life.
Exactly. It revisits that feeling we talked about right at the start, didn't it?
Yeah, the sheer volume.
The information, the choices that can leave us feeling scattered and, frankly, ineffective. The chapter reminds us of that intuitive understanding that the path to more is through less, but well, the real challenge lies in identifying that crucial starting point, that one thing.
It emphasizes that the one thing isn't just another productivity hack,
No.
It sits at the very heart of achieving extraordinary results. It's the essential foundation upon which success is built. It's presented as like a profound idea wrapped in a deceptively simple concept.
And it includes an interesting little tidbit about Merriam-Webster's Word of the Year.
Just illustrating how societal focus can shift and change over time. Which provides a nice contrast, actually, to the timeless, consistent relevance of the one thing principle for individual success, regardless of current trends.
That's a good point. Okay, now let's move into chapter 8. The 6 lies between you and success.
Right. This chapter delves into the common beliefs that can actually stop us from fully embracing the power of the one thing.
Yeah, it makes the important point that our deeply held beliefs, even if they're inaccurate, well, they have a powerful influence on our actions and ultimately our results.
Totally. It explains that adopting the one thing approach can be challenging because we've often bought into these other things, the 6 lies about success, as they call them.
And these misconceptions can really cloud our judgment, can't they? Lead us down less effective paths.
For sure. The chapter outlines these 6 lies. Everything matters equally.
A big one.
Multitasking.
Another classic.
A disciplined life, willpower is always on will call. A balanced life, and big is bad.
It briefly introduces the idea that these are common myths that just obscure the true path to achieving extraordinary results. We'll probably dig deeper into each of those in future discussions, I imagine.
Yeah, likely. And it includes a really crucial quote here that sums up the essence of prioritizing. Things which matter most must never be at the mercy of things which matter least.
Ooh, that hits home, doesn't it?
It really does. The importance of focusing on the one thing.
Okay, let's transition then to chapter 9. Duran cracks the code.
Right.
This chapter introduces a fascinating historical anecdote that leads us to a fundamental principle for understanding the power of the one thing. Pareto's principle.
This is such a great story. It starts with managers at General Motors back in the late 1930s. They had this issue with a faulty card reader that was accidentally creating a kind of cipher.
Weird.
Yeah. And Joseph M. Duran, a visiting consultant, not only deciphered the code, but this experience actually led him to discover the work of Vilfredo Pareto.
Ah, the connection. Duran recognized this compelling parallel between Pareto's 19th century observation about wealth distribution in Italy.
The 80-20 thing.
Exactly, that roughly 80% of the land was owned by 20% of the people. He saw a parallel with his own findings in quality control, where he noticed that a small number of defects usually accounted for the vast majority of problems.
And this led to Duran's key insight, the concept of the vital few and trivial many.
Right. He actually coined the term Pareto's principle to describe this unequal distribution, which is quite remarkable when you think about it.
It really is.
And what's crucial to understand here is that Pareto's principle isn't just some theoretical observation. The book emphasizes its provable, predictable certainty of nature and a fundamental truth about productivity.
Yeah, they're pretty strong on that point.
They even include Richard Koch's definition. A minority of causes, inputs, or effort usually lead to a majority of the results, outputs, or rewards.
So the big takeaway here is simple but powerful. Yeah. When it comes to achieving success, not all actions are created equal.
Right. Absolutely. A relatively small percentage of what we do will generate the lion's share of our results.
Which just reinforces the importance, again, of identifying and focusing on that high-impact one thing.
Okay, building directly on this, we move to chapter 10. Extreme Pareto.
Extreme Pareto. I like it.
This chapter encourages us to take Pareto's principle even further, to apply it iteratively, kind of like nesting dolls, to find the vital few of the vital few.
So drilling down within that initial 20% that gets the most results, to find the absolute most impactful action within that group.
Exactly. It's about really honing in.
The book shares a really illustrative anecdote about this, doesn't it? Brainstorming, like 100 ideas.
Yeah, then rigorously narrowing them down to 10.
And finally selecting just one big idea, which in their case was writing this very book.
Right, which then led to massive success. It really embodies that idea of thinking big but going very small in terms of your immediate focus.
And there's a relatable personal example, too, about learning guitar.
Oh yeah, the minor blues scale. Focusing intensely on just that one scale, the one foundational thing for a certain style of guitar, playing it, unlocked a much larger world of musical possibilities and understanding for the person learning.
That's a great illustration, isn't it?
Yeah.
How even in personal development, finding that fundamental one thing can lead to significant breakthroughs in learning and progress.
Definitely. Okay, so finally, this initial section of the book wraps up with a brief introduction to 2 more concepts in Chapter 11, 3 commitments, and Chapter 12, the 4 thieves.
Yes. Chapter 11 just briefly touches on the 3 commitments needed for truly making the one thing your priority. Following the path of mastery. Moving from E to P, that's entrepreneurial, to purposeful.
Right.
And living the accountability cycle. Yeah. And then Chapter 12 introduces the 4 common obstacles, the thieves that can steal our focus and productivity.
Multitasking, lack of sleep, poor diet, distractions, the usual suspects maybe. But it's important to remember, these chapters are just being introduced here, right? They signal key areas that the book will explore in much greater depth later on, all in support of that core principle, focusing on the one thing.
Right. So to kind of bring it all together, briefly summarize our deep dive into these initial chapters of The One Thing. Well, the central message is powerfully clear, isn't it?
I think so.
By concentrating your energy, identifying and focusing on the single most important thing in any given situation, whether that's a huge business goal, a personal aspiration, or even just a daily task.
You can achieve disproportionately extraordinary results. It's about leverage.
Exactly. We've explored the fundamental power of the focusing question. What's the one thing you can do, such that by doing it, everything else would be easier or unnecessary?
And the foundational principles behind it. Going small, understanding the exponential power of that domino effect.
Right, the geometric progression.
And strategically applying Pareto's principle to pinpoint those vital few actions that really drive the majority of our success.
And for you, the learner, we really hope this deep dive has provided a clear, actionable framework, a way to gain knowledge and make real progress towards your goals without feeling overwhelmed by the sheer volume of things demanding your attention.
It's really about cutting through the noise, isn't it? Finding that one lever that can actually move the world for you.
Yeah.
So maybe as you go about your day today, consider this. What is the single most important thing you could focus on right now that would have the biggest positive impact on your most important goal?
That's a great question to leave people with. Just take a moment to really think about that one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if this initial exploration has sparked your curiosity, we definitely encourage you to delve further into the one thing itself. Read the subsequent chapters to get deeper insights into those crucial commitments and the common productivity thieves we only briefly touched on today.
Absolutely. We trust this deep dive has been valuable for you. And, we're always eager to explain new sources, so please don't hesitate to let us know what other material you'd like us to unpack in future sessions.